They declared her worthless. They declared her barren. Sophia Hagen knelt in the thick, unforgiving snow outside the grand timbered manor she had helped shape into a home, watching her husband Victor fling her valises into the drifts with contemptuous force. The red sweater she wore, once a gift from him on a happier winter, was now her only shield against the biting Norwegian wind, its vivid hue stark against the white desolation. Snowflakes clung to her blonde hair, tied back in a practical knot now coming undone, as tears carved hot trails down her cheeks. She believed her world had shattered irreparably. She believed the warmth of family, the joy of motherhood, would remain forever beyond her reach. She was profoundly mistaken. In mere weeks, she would not simply become a mother. She would ascend as the indispensable heart of an ancient vampire lineage, the sole woman capable of gentling 5 wild immortal children and piercing the armored solitude of their formidable sire. This is the saga of how a cast-off wife compelled a lord of eternal night to surrender his heart. The physician's chamber in Dr. Larsson's Oslo practice carried the sterile tang of carbolic and irrevocable truth. Sophia Hagen sat rigid on the examination couch, hands clenched till nails bit flesh. "I regret the findings are conclusive, Fru Hagen," Dr. Larsson murmured, his tone that measured condolence reserved for lives upended. "Extensive scarring within. Conception probability beneath 1%. Should fortune intervene, bearing to term would claim your life." Sophia felt vitality drain from the room. It surpassed mere prognosis. It was interment of dreams. Beside her, Victor extended no comfort, no touch. Victor Hagen, scion of Hagen Timber and her university sweetheart, consulted his timepiece. "Thus irreparable," Victor stated flatly, addressing the doctor alone. "No intervention, no excision. Resources abound, Larsson." "It's not machinery, Victor," the physician countered, brow creased. "It's your wife's form. She flourishes otherwise, yet progeny, destiny withholds." The sleigh ride home through twilight fjords was entombed in silence, heavy, asphyxiating as pre-blizzard hush. Sophia gazed at the iron-gray waters, tears tracing silently. "Victor," she ventured as they approached their vast highland estate, "we could welcome orphans. Many routes to hearth, fosterage, surrogacy." Victor reined the horses. He faced her, refined features warped in alien disdain. "Hagens engender pure descent, Sophia. We perpetuate patrimony. Father erected this realm for his grandson, not some foundling." He descended. Sophia pursued, heart frantic. Within, fires blazed, yet chill permeated. In the great room reclined Ingrid, Victor's mother, savoring glug, her piercing gaze dissecting Sophia as faltering prey. "Well?" Ingrid inquired sans preamble. "Shall she acquit her charge, or persist as arid as her neglected rose beds?" Victor strode past, pouring aquavit. "Terminated, mother. She's hollow, wholly expendable." Sophia halted in the threshold, trembling. "I stand here. I am your spouse, not chattel." Ingrid clinked her vessel sharply. "You were spouse conditional on heir delivery. That the covenant, uttered or implied. You rose from obscurity, Sophia. We conferred this existence, raiment, equipage, station, given youth and vigor. Defaulting the lone corporeal imperative, what precisely do you tender?" "I adore him," Sophia cried, beseeching Victor's silhouette. "Victor attest 7 years wed. Counts that for naught?" Victor wheeled, his eyes void. "It counts 7 forfeited years. I'm 35, Sophia. Demand a son for board sanction imminent. Impossible with sterile consort." He withdrew a dossier from his coat, casting it upon the hearth table. "Annulment parchments," Victor uttered indifferently. "Solicitors drafted seasons past anticipating this verdict. Subscribe, claim paltry annuity for wretched quarters elsewhere. Resist, Ingrid guarantees your ostracism province-wide." "You premeditated?" Sophia gasped, knees buckling. She collapsed upon a hassock. "Pack," Ingrid decreed, rising, adjusting gown. "Tonight visitors convene. No tolerance for maudlin, unproductive female obstructing suites." Victor implore. Sophia entreated, clutching his sleeve. He recoiled as if venomous. "Vacate, Sophia. Finus. Debasement consummate." Ere dusk deepened, Sophia Hagen knelt driveway side. Snow cascaded, merciless flurry. 2 cases encompassed garments, volumes. Accounts sealed upon departure. Victor severed forthwith. She lugged cases down the protracted avenue, flakes fusing with searing tears. No kin. Parents long interred. No profession. Victor insisted abandoning instruction for maternal readiness. 32, forsaken, adjudged valueless by her cherished. Yet as cold numbed her fingers and despair clawed her throat, a spark kindled defiant within. They repudiated her for childlessness, deemed devotion commerce. I shall persevere, she vowed to the storm, and someday Victor Hagen will lament branding me worthless. 1890, Norwegian fjords. Sophia receives infertility confirmation. Husband Victor and mother-in-law Ingrid cruelly reject her, evicting her into the storm. The wind off the fjord carried the sharp bite of winter even though autumn had barely surrendered. Sophia Hagen sat in Dr. Larsson's modest Oslo office, the room's single window framing a view of slate-gray waters churning under restless clouds. The air smelled of iodine and old leather-bound journals stacked on the desk. Sophia's hands rested in her lap, fingers twisted together as if prayer alone could alter what was coming. Dr. Larsson cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles. Fru Hagen, the examinations and tests are conclusive. There is extensive scarring from the childhood fever and subsequent complications. Natural conception is improbable, less than 1% chance. And should it occur against odds, carrying to term would endanger your life severely. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading through Sophia's chest. She had known deep down from the years of negative hopes each month. But hearing it spoken, final, medical, irreversible, made it real. Victor sat beside her, immaculate in his charcoal wool coat, the silver Hagen crest pin glinting at his lapel. He did not reach for her hand. He did not offer comfort. Instead, he glanced at his pocket watch, a gesture so casual it cut deeper than any shout. So there is no remedy? Victor asked the doctor directly, as if Sophia were not in the room. No surgery, no treatment abroad? Money is no object. Larsson shook his head gravely. It is not a question of funds, Herr Hagen. The damage is permanent. Your wife is otherwise robust, but motherhood through natural means, it is not to be. The sleigh ride back to their estate in the highlands was silent, broken only by the creak of runners on packed snow and the occasional snort of the horses. Sophia stared at the passing pines, tears freezing on her lashes. Victor, she finally whispered, there are other paths. Adoption societies in Christiania or even abroad. Surrogacy arrangements. Victor's laugh was short, bitter. Hagens do not adopt, Sophia. We do not import heirs like timber from Sweden. My father built this legacy for blood of his blood. They arrived at Hagen Hall, a sprawling manor of dark timber and stone that Sophia had once believed would echo with children's laughter. Instead, it greeted her with cold formality. In the great room, fire roaring but doing little to warm the atmosphere, waited Ingrid Hagen, Victor's mother, dowager queen of the family empire, her silver hair pulled severely back, eyes like winter steel. Well? Ingrid asked without preamble, setting down her embroidery. Has the girl finally fulfilled her purpose? Victor removed his gloves, tossing them to a servant. No, mother. She is incapable. Permanently. Ingrid's gaze turned to Sophia, dissecting. Incapable. After 7 years and unlimited resources. How disappointing. Sophia stepped forward, voice trembling but steady. I'm standing right here. I am your daughter-in-law, not livestock to be judged at market. Ingrid's smile was thin. You were welcomed into this family on the understanding, spoken or not, that you would provide continuation. You arrived with nothing but a pretty face and teaching credentials we deemed quaint. We gave you position, wardrobe, travel. In return, you were to secure the line. You have failed. Victor's eyes were distant, already moving past her. The lawyers prepared documents some time ago, anticipating this possibility. He placed a folder on the table. Sign and you receive a modest allowance, enough for rooms in town. Contest it, and we ensure no school or household in Norway employs you again. Sophia stared at the papers, the words blurring. You planned this. I planned for every contingency, Victor said coolly. Pack tonight. Guests arrive tomorrow, and I prefer not to explain a weeping, useless woman in the East Wing. The eviction was swift and merciless. Servants, who once curtsied, now avoided her eyes as they carried her trunks to the drive. By nightfall, Sophia stood in swirling snow, 2 cases at her feet, accounts frozen, future erased. The red sweater, Victor's gift from their courtship, was her warmest garment against the storm. As the great doors closed behind her, She dragged her belongings down the long tree-lined avenue, snow filling her footprints almost as quickly as she made them. 32 years old, childless by fate, wifeless by decree, penniless by design. Yet somewhere beneath the crushing weight of rejection, a small, stubborn flame refused extinction. They had taken everything but her will to endure. She would survive. And one day they would regret reducing her to nothing. The wind clawed at Sophia's skirts as she crossed the final stretch toward Grimstead Hall. Snow swirled in vicious spirals, stinging her cheeks, muffling sound until the world felt hollow and unreal. Each step sank into drifts that seemed determined to drag her back, as though the mountain itself objected to her presence. Still, she pressed on, boots soaked, fingers numb around the handle of her battered case. The hall loomed larger with every step, an austere fortress of dark stone rising from the white like a judgment passed long ago and never revoked. Grimstead Hall was not merely old, it was watchful. Narrow windows stared down at her approach, their glass reflecting the storm's fury like unblinking eyes. One window alone glowed faintly, a solitary ember in a carcass of shadow. Sophia stopped at the iron-bound doors, chest heaving. She took in the carvings, wolves, thorned vines, and symbols she did not recognize, worn smooth by centuries of weather and whispers. The rumors returned unbidden. Children who screamed through the night. A master of the house who never appeared in town. Servants who never stayed. She raised her hand and knocked. The sound echoed, swallowed, then echoed again from somewhere deep within. For a moment, she wondered if no one would answer, if she would freeze on the threshold, another foolish woman seduced by desperation and money. She pictured Oslo's attic room, the bakery's warm smells she could no longer afford, Victor's voice cool and precise as he dismantled her life. Never again, she vowed silently. The door creaked open just enough to reveal a man cloaked in shadow. He was tall and gaunt, his hair iron gray, his eyes pale and assessing. A candle trembled in his hand, its light carving harsh planes into his face. "You're late," he said, voice dry as old parchment. "You specified after dusk," Sophia replied, forcing steadiness into her tone. The man studied her, her snow-soaked coat, her thin gloves, the exhaustion she could not fully disguise. His gaze lingered not with hunger or pity, but calculation. "Name?" "Sophia Lindstrom." Pause. Something unreadable flickered across his expression. "Enter." The door closed behind her with a finality that made her spine stiffen. Warmth hit her all at once, thick with the scent of beeswax, pine smoke, and something darker, leather perhaps, or iron. The entrance hall stretched upward into shadow, a cathedral of stone and timber. Antlers crowned the walls. Portraits lined the stairwell, their eyes following her ascent as the man gestured for her to follow. "You were informed of the conditions?" he asked as they walked. "Yes." "Isolation?" "Yes." "Discipline?" Sophia swallowed. "I understand children who grieve." The man stopped abruptly and turned to face her. In the candlelight, his eyes sharpened. "These are not ordinary children." "Neither am I," she replied before she could stop herself. Silence bloomed between them, tense, evaluating. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Good," he said. "Ordinary women never last." He led her through corridors that seemed to twist and fold upon themselves, past closed doors and distant sounds. Footsteps overhead, a muffled thud, laughter that cut off too quickly to be comforting. Finally, they reached a set of double doors carved with the same thorn motif she had seen outside. He opened them. The nursery was vast, firelit, and immaculate, too immaculate. 5 children sat scattered across the room, each frozen mid-motion as Sophia entered. They ranged in age, the eldest perhaps 10, the youngest no more than 4. Their eyes turned toward her in unison. Not curious, assessing. The eldest boy stood slowly. His gaze was sharp, almost adult, his mouth set in something between challenge and warning. "You won't stay," he said flatly. Sophia met his stare, heart pounding. She knelt so they were eye level, ignoring the ache in her knees, the tremor in her hands. "I didn't come here to leave," she said. "And I don't scare easily." Behind her, unseen, a presence seemed to settle into the room, heavy, deliberate. The air shifted, thickened, as though the hall itself were listening. From the shadows near the hearth, a voice spoke, low, controlled, and unmistakably dangerous. "We shall see." Sophia rose slowly and turned. For the first time since leaving Oslo, fear threaded through her resolve. Not the fear of poverty or humiliation, but of something vast and unknowable. And yet, beneath it, something else stirred. Purpose. Whatever Grimstead Hall was hiding, whatever darkness haunted its walls, it had underestimated one thing. Sophia Lindstrom had already survived ruin, and she had nothing left to lose. The West Wing door shut behind Sophia with a decisive thud, the iron lock clicking into place like a gauntlet thrown at fate. For a heartbeat, the silence pressed in, thick, watchful. Then chaos surged again, louder for her defiance. Astrid moved first. She did not walk. She glided, feet never touching the floor, eyes glowing a predatory blue as she circled Sophia like a shark testing unfamiliar prey. Her lips peeled back, revealing fangs too long, too sharp for any child. Tor laughed from his perch atop the ruined wardrobe, a rough, feral sound that echoed off the stone walls. Freya and Bjorn streaked past in a blur, overturning chairs, clawing at tapestries, while little Ira watched it all with solemn fascination, thumb pressed to her mouth. Sophia's heart thundered, but she did not retreat. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself the way she had on the worst days of her marriage. The loneliest nights after loss hollowed her chest. Fear was familiar. She refused to let it rule her now. "I said enough," she repeated, voice firm, resonant. Not loud, certain. Astrid halted mid-air, brows knitting. "You're not screaming," she said, confused. "They always scream." Sophia met her gaze. "Because screaming gives you power. And I don't intend to give you any." That earned her Tor's attention. He crouched low, eyes narrowing. "You should be afraid of us." "I am," Sophia said honestly. "But fear doesn't mean surrender." She bent, calmly retrieving her fallen bag, brushing dust from its worn leather. The deliberate normalcy of the action unsettled them more than panic ever could have. Freya slowed, curiosity overtaking frenzy. Bjorn skidded to a stop beside his sister, sniffing the air. "You smell different," Freya murmured. "Not like the others," Bjorn added. Sophia straightened. "I smell like someone who isn't leaving." A low growl rippled through the room. Astrid landed lightly on the floor, mere inches from Sophia's face. Up close, she was heartbreakingly young beneath the menace. Sharp cheekbones, stormy eyes, grief coiled tight beneath rage. "You'll run by morning," Astrid said. "They all do." Sophia shook her head. "No. I've already lost everything worth running from." "That did it?" Something fractured, quietly, invisibly. Astrid's snarl faltered. Tor shifted, unease flickering behind bravado. Even the walls seemed to listen. From the shadows beyond the doorway, Nikolai Grimm remained motionless. He had intended to intervene the moment Sophia faltered, to pull her from danger before blood was spilled. He had done it before. Too many times. Hope was a luxury he had buried with his wife centuries ago. But now, she stood unarmed in a den of half-feral vampire children and did not beg, did not threaten, did not cower. She claimed space. Maternal instinct honed by grief, sharpened by deprivation. Ira toddled forward then, small feet crunching over broken glass. Sophia's breath caught. "No," Astrid snapped. "She bites." Sophia dropped instantly to her knees, ignoring the risk, lowering herself to Ira's level. "Hello," she said softly. "You must be Ira." The child blinked, then reached out, fingers brushing Sophia's cheek. Cold met warm. Ira giggled. "She likes you," Bjorn whispered, awed. Sophia smiled, tears threatening. Children always know who means to stay. Nikolai felt it then, a deep, resonant pull in his chest, ancient and dangerous. The curse stirred, not in hunger, but recognition. This woman did not see monsters. She saw children. By dawn, the West Wing was quieter than it had been in decades. Tor slept sprawled across the floor, exhaustion overtaking fury. Freya curled beside Bjorn, clutching a torn book Sophia had begun reading aloud. Astrid sat rigid by the window, pretending indifference while listening to every word. Ira slept in Sophia's lap, tiny hand fisted in her sleeve. Sophia herself remained awake, back against the wall, humming softly despite the ache in her bones. The door opened without sound. Nikolai entered, gaze sweeping the room, then fixing on Sophia with an intensity that made her breath hitch. Not predatory. Reverent. "You survived," he said quietly. "I told you I would," she replied, lifting her chin. He looked at his children, his wild, broken progeny, peaceful in ways he had not seen since their mother's death. "You are hired," Nikolai said. Then, after a pause that carried centuries of restraint, he added, on a permanent trial. Sophia smiled faintly. That's all I ask. As dawn's pale light crept through Grimstead Hall's towering windows, Nikolai Grimm realized the impossible truth. The blizzard had delivered not a governess, but salvation. The West Wing breathed like a wounded beast, every draft a growl, every shadow a threat. Sophia felt it the moment she crossed the threshold, the iron door sealing behind her with a final echoing thud. The air was thick with old anger and old grief, a place abandoned not just by caretakers but by hope. 5 pairs of eyes followed her. Astrid straightened to her full height, boots hovering an inch above the ruined floorboards. Her beauty was sharp, dangerous like frost on glass. Tor's shoulders rolled as he cracked his neck, the sound loud in the stillness. Freya's fingers twitched, power rippling beneath her skin, while Bjorn crouched low, ready to bolt or strike. Little Ira sat amid torn cushions, too quiet for a child her age, watching Sophia as if weighing a riddle. Sophia set her bag down slowly. Not in surrender, deliberately. I won't scream, she said evenly. I won't run. And I won't beg. Astrid's lips curved. Brave words from food. Sophia turned her gaze to the shattered window, the claw marks, the broken chairs. She let silence stretch, an old teacher's trick. When she spoke again, her voice carried something unexpected. Your mother would hate this room. That did it. Freya recoiled as if struck. Bjorn's snarl faltered. Even Astrid stiffened. Sophia didn't press. She walked instead, slowly, unafraid, toward the overturned table, righted it with a grunt, and winced at her own human weakness. We clean, she said. Not a plea. A statement. Then we eat. Then we talk. Chaos comes later, if it still feels necessary. Tor barked a laugh. You think you can command us? Sophia faced him fully now. Her eyes were tired, yes, but unyielding. I think you've been waiting for someone to try. From the shadows beyond the doorway, Nikolai Grimm watched. He had expected screams. What? Another failure to bury alongside the others. His fingers were already clenched, prepared to intervene. But the human woman did something far more dangerous. She stayed. When Ira took Sophia's hand, something inside Nikolai fractured, softly, painfully. The bond between child and caretaker, so natural, so forbidden in his grief-stricken house, bloomed in seconds. Hours passed. The children tested, pushed, snarled. Sophia held the line. She scolded without cruelty, listened without fear, and when Astrid finally broke, voice shaking as she admitted she remembered the sound of her mother's last breath, Sophia did not recoil. She opened her arms. By dawn, the West Wing was no longer a cage. It was a room. Nikolai turned away before she could see him, ancient heart pounding with a truth he had not dared name in decades. This woman had not come to tame monsters. She had come to mother them. And for the first time since darkness claimed his family, Nikolai Grimm feared one thing above all else: losing her. Days did not simply pass in the West Wing, they softened. Sophia learned the manor's strange clock by instinct rather than bells. She woke when the house sighed awake, when shutters trembled open and the long corridors drank in moonlight. Nikolai never announced his arrangements, yet each evening she found quiet proofs of his watchfulness. Fresh candles, clean water, bolts of cloth left just outside her door, a note written in precise hand, "You will find the carpenters at dusk." The West Wing changed first in structure, then in spirit. Cracked plaster was mended. Shattered furniture was repaired by grim-faced craftsmen who worked quickly and spoke little, their eyes avoiding the children's. Shelves were rehung. Rugs laid. Windows scrubbed until moonlight spilled clean and silver instead of fractured and cruel. Sophia oversaw everything, sleeves rolled, hair pinned back, refusing to let the children retreat into corners while adults fixed things around them. This is your home, she told them firmly. You help rebuild what you live in. At first they resisted. Tor complained. Astrid scoffed. Freya hovered nervously, afraid her strength would break what she touched. Bjorn oscillated between wild bursts of energy and sulky withdrawal. Only Ira followed Sophia everywhere, solemn as a shadow. But routine is a quiet conqueror. Each night began the same way, cleaning, then lessons. Reading for Bjorn, numbers for Freya, history debates for Astrid that Sophia pretended not to enjoy too much. Then music, then stories by the fire. Chaos had no room to thrive when every hour had a place. Yet beneath the order lay wounds that no broom could sweep away. It surfaced one evening while Sophia sat cross-legged near the hearth, carefully stitching a torn storybook back together. The children lounged nearby in varying poses of restless comfort. Astrid levitated the needle when Sophia's fingers cramped, her control precise now, no longer violent. She was human, Astrid said suddenly, eyes fixed on the flame. Sophia did not look up. Your mother. Astrid nodded once. Father fell in love with her voice. She sang. He said it made the castle feel less dead. Tor leaned against the mantel, jaw tight. He turned her after they married. Said it would give her centuries with us. Freya hugged her knees. But pregnancies don't wait for centuries. The room went very still. Sophia felt the truth settle before it was spoken, heavy as snow on a roof. Vampire children grow fast, Astrid continued, voice brittle. Too fast. Her body couldn't. She bled, Bjorn whispered. I smelled it from the corridor. Ira whimpered softly, crawling into Sophia's lap as if the memory itself had reached for her. Tor stared into the fire. Father held her while she died. Then he looked at us like we were weapons. Like we'd taken something from him. Freya's voice cracked. He put us here so he wouldn't hate us more. Sophia closed the book. Her hands trembled, but not with fear, with rage, grief, and a fierce, aching clarity. She gathered them in, not hesitating, not flinching from cool skin or sharp edges. Astrid stiffened at first, then slowly leaned in. Tor resisted longest, then bowed his head. Freya sobbed silently. Bjorn pressed his face into Sophia's sleeve. Ira clutched her dress like an anchor. Listen to me, Sophia said, voice low and unyielding. Your mother chose love. She chose your father, knowing what he was. And she chose you, every one of you. Her death was a tragedy, not a verdict. They looked at her, ancient eyes suddenly young. You were not born wrong, she continued. You were born loved. And no grief, no matter how old, gives anyone the right to abandon you. Ira looked up. Stay? She asked again, as she often did. Sophia kissed her cool forehead without hesitation. I'm here. From that night something shifted. Astrid began asking questions before acting. Tor started fixing things instead of breaking them. Freya practiced control beside Sophia rather than alone. Bjorn slept through the night. Ira laughed, an unguarded sound that startled the walls themselves. They built rituals, shared meals even if the children only nibbled, music in the evenings, stories of human heroes and monsters who learned mercy. Sophia taught them that strength did not require cruelty, that power could be held gently. And always unseen, Nikolai watched. From balconies. From corridors. From the dark spaces between torchlight. He watched his children soften. He watched the wing fill with sound that did not echo like a tomb. He watched Sophia kneel to wipe a child's hands, stand firm against rebellion, cradle grief without fear. Hope, he knew, was dangerous. But as laughter drifted through halls long silent, Nikolai Grimm felt something stir that no curse, no century, had been able to kill. The manor was remembering how to live. Winter pressed hard against Grimstead Hall, but inside its stone bones, something unmistakably softened. The transformation began with routine, quiet, steady, uncompromising. Sophia believed in structure the way others believed in prayer. Wake at dusk. Lessons before feeding. Chores assigned not as punishment but as proof of trust. Even immortals, she insisted, needed expectations. At first, the children resisted. Tor bristled at etiquette drills, Freya sulked through arithmetic, Astrid mocked human history as irrelevant. But Sophia met each rebellion with calm persistence. She did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She simply waited, unmoved, until defiance burned itself out. And slowly, inevitably, it did. Meals became anchors in the day. Blood goblets were served without ceremony, but Sophia added bread, soups, roasted apples. Comfort foods that grounded the children in ritual rather than hunger. They began sitting together at the long table instead of scattering like feral creatures. Bjorn learned to wait his turn. Astrid corrected Ira's posture with surprising gentleness. The manor noticed. Drafts that once howled through corridors softened. Doors creaked less. Candles burned longer. Even the servants, those pale, half-seen attendants bound to Nikolai's will, lingered now, placing flowers, polishing banisters, refilling inkwells without being summoned. Grimstead Hall, long frozen in grief, was remembering how to live. Nikolai watched it all. At first, he remained distant, observing from thresholds and balconies, a shadow among shadows. He told himself he was vigilant, ensuring safety. But the truth was harder. Sophia unsettled him. Not with fear, but with possibility. He had ruled this house for centuries, commanded loyalty, enforced silence. None of it had healed the ache left by his wife's death. He had believed warmth was gone forever, buried with her beneath the mountain chapel. Yet now, laughter echoed where silence once reigned. One evening he paused in the corridor outside the schoolroom. Through the cracked door, he watched Sophia teaching Tor and Astrid a human game of strategy, forcing them to think before acting. Her voice was firm, amused, endlessly patient. "You're not losing because you're weaker," she told Tor mildly. "You're losing because you rush." Tor scowled, then tried again. Slower, smarter. Nikolai felt something twist in his chest. Later, he found himself lingering by the great hearth as Sophia played the pianoforte she had insisted be repaired. The tune was simple, almost childish, but it filled the vast hall with something dangerously intimate. Memory rose unbidden, his wife humming as she brushed her hair, centuries ago. He should have left. Instead he sat. Sophia noticed him only when the piece ended. She did not startle. She never did. She simply looked up, eyes steady, accepting his presence as if it had always been meant to be there. "You're welcome to join us," she said once, nodding to the children gathered for evening reading. And Nikolai did. At first he said nothing, only listened as she read aloud, her voice shaping courage and kindness into something tangible. But soon the children began directing questions to him. History, legends, the truth behind myths. He answered carefully, aware that every word reshaped how they saw him, not as a distant, grieving lord, but as a father again. One night, after the wing had settled into sleep and snow traced pale patterns along the windows, Sophia found Nikolai waiting in the library. Firelight gilded his silver hair. Books lay open, untouched. "You have changed them," he said quietly. "They changed themselves," she replied. "I just stayed." He studied her then, not as an employee, not even as a savior, but as a woman who had walked into darkness and lit it without demanding anything in return. "What do you need, Sophia?" he asked. She considered the question. No one had asked her that in a very long time. "To matter," she said at last. "To be where I am not disposable." Nikolai stepped closer, lifting a hand as if unsure he had the right. When his fingers brushed her hair, the contact was gentle, reverent, less hunger than recognition. "You are not disposable here," he said, voice thick with vow. "You are foundational." The words settled between them, heavy with promise. Outside, winter raged on. Inside Grimstead Hall, something ancient and broken began, finally, to heal. The storm had sealed Grimstead Hall away from the world, snow piling against the windows until even the mountains vanished. Wind howled like a living thing, rattling shutters and driving everyone inward, into warmth, into memory, into truths that could no longer be outrun. Long after the children slept, Sophia followed Nikolai through torchlit corridors to his private study. The room felt untouched by time. Dark paneled walls etched with runes, shelves of ancient journals, maps of forgotten kingdoms pinned with iron nails. A fire roared in the hearth, casting gold over his pale features and softening the sharp angles grief had carved there. He poured for her first, careful, almost reverent. For himself, he uncorked a crystal decanter of something darker, richer. For a long moment he said nothing, staring into the flames as though they might answer for him. "Her name was Eileen," he began quietly. She laughed loudly, sang terribly, loved the children's chaos. A breath unsteady. She chose me knowing what I was. I promised her forever, and believed I could keep it. Sophia listened without interruption, her presence an anchor rather than a demand. "When she carried Ira, I felt the fear too late," he continued. "Vampire children grow fast. Too fast. Her body could not keep pace." His voice broke. "I held her as the light left her eyes. And when Ira cried, alive, hungry, I felt betrayal. As if love itself had turned against me." Sophia reached across the table, covering his cold hand with both of hers. "Grief doesn't make you cruel," she said softly. "It makes you lost." His gaze lifted to hers, naked with guilt. "I abandoned them. Told myself it was protection. In truth, it was cowardice." She shook her head. "You survived something impossible. So did they." The storm battered the walls, but inside the room something loosened. Nikolai turned his hand, fingers closing around hers with fragile certainty. And you, he asked. You carry sorrow with the same silence. Sophia inhaled, the words long buried finally given permission to rise. She spoke of hospitals and verdicts spoken without mercy. Of a marriage that collapsed under the weight of what she could not give. Of being told, by those who once loved her, that her worth had expired. They looked at me and saw an ending, she finished. Not a beginning. Nikolai stood, drawn toward her as if by gravity. They were blind, he said fiercely. You walked into a house of monsters and gave them peace. You turned ruin into refuge. He stopped inches away, hesitant despite centuries of command. Stay, he said, not as an order but a plea. Not because you must. Because you choose to. Sophia searched his face, the grief, the restraint, the careful hope. Then she nodded, tears shining but unashamed. Their kiss was gentle, unhurried. Not hunger, not conquest, recognition. Two wounded souls choosing to heal in the same direction. Outside the storm raged on. Inside Grimstead Hall, something ancient and broken finally began to mend. The winter solstice ball was not merely a celebration, it was a reckoning. Frostheim Palace rose from the mountains like a cathedral of ice, its spires crowned with blue flame that never melted the snow beneath. Inside, crystal chandeliers refracted firelight into rainbows that slid across marble floors. Vampires of ancient covens moved with predatory elegance, while carefully selected humans, bankers, diplomats, heirs, stood stiff with awe, knowing they were guests in a realm not truly theirs. When the herald struck the silver staff and announced, Lord Nikolai Grimm of Grimstead Hall and his consort, Lady Sophia Grimm, the music faltered. All eyes turned. Sophia entered on Nikolai's arm, her posture calm, her chin lifted. Midnight blue velvet draped her like living shadow, cut to honor both human grace and vampire regality. Grim sapphires rested at her throat and wrists, pulsing faintly with warded light, symbols not of ownership but protection. Her hair was braided with silver thread, her expression serene. She did not look like a woman rescued. She looked like a woman who had arrived exactly where she belonged. Whispers rippled outward like shockwaves. A human consort. The grim lord has chosen. She bears no fear. Nikolai felt it too, the shift in the room, the subtle recalibration of power. For centuries he had stood alone at gatherings like this, respected, feared, but distant. Tonight, with Sophia beside him, something else radiated from him. Stability. Legacy. Across the hall, Victor Hagen froze mid-conversation, color draining from his face. Ingrid followed his gaze, and stiffened, fingers digging into Victor's sleeve as recognition struck like a blade. That's impossible, Ingrid breathed. She was nothing. Victor swallowed hard. Sophia? They moved forward, compelled by disbelief as much as arrogance. Sophia, Victor said, forcing a laugh that rang hollow. You disappear for months and reappear here? On his arm? What sort of trick is this? Sophia turned to him slowly. Her calm unsettled him more than anger ever could. No trick, she said evenly. Only consequence. Ingrid sneered, desperation sharpening her cruelty. You were dismissed for a reason. A barren woman playing queen? How fitting for monsters. The temperature dropped. Nikolai's growl was low, ancient, vibrating through bone and stone alike. Conversations died instantly. Another word, he said softly, and you will not leave this palace under your own power. Ingrid recoiled. Victor stepped back, suddenly aware, terrifyingly aware, of where he stood. Sophia continued, voice steady but carrying across the hushed hall. You cast me aside because I could not give you children. You call me useless, broken. Yet here I have done what you never could. She gestured subtly, and the doors at the far end of the hall opened. Astrid, Tor, Freya, Bjorn, and little Ira entered together, impeccably dressed, composed, eyes bright with confidence rather than feral unrest. They took their places behind Nikolai and Sophia, a united front. These are Nikolai's children, Sophia said. They were wild with grief when I met them. Angry, afraid, blaming themselves for a mother's death. Her gaze locked on Victor. I did not birth them. I chose them. Murmurs swelled, admiration, awe, calculation. They thrive, Sophia continued. They laugh. They sleep without nightmares. They learn restraint, kindness, strength. I am their mother in every way that matters. Nikolai placed his hand over hers, a silent vow made visible. Victor opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. Evidence was presented swiftly. Letters, testimonies, records of abandonment and cruelty. The supernatural court, ever intolerant of weakness disguised as dominance, turned cold. Alliances shifted in real time. Guard stepped forward. Victor Hagen. Ingrid Hagen, the magistrate announced. You are no longer welcome in this assembly. As they were escorted out, Ingrid shrieked curses that echoed uselessly against stone. Victor did not look back. Sophia watched them go, not with triumph born of vengeance, but with peace born of closure. She turned to Nikolai, her family behind her, the court before her. The woman once called useless now stood at the heart of power, not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it. And for the first time in her life, she knew without doubt. She was home. Spring arrived early to Grimstad's valleys, as if the mountains themselves had decided that winter's long shadows must yield to life. Snow melted into rushing streams, and the manor, once a tomb of silence and sorrow, bustled with the soft cacophony of vitality. Birds nested in the eaves, their calls piercing the lingering chill, and ivy crawled determinately across stone walls, mirroring the slow reclamation of warmth within. Here, Sophia's presence had become a sun to a long-frozen house. The West Wing, once a battlefield of broken furniture and shattered spirits, now resonated with laughter, shouts, and whispered confidences. Sophia's influence had transformed the children from feral, unpredictable shadows into beings learning both control and joy. Astrid, her eldest, moved with the measured grace of a student of poise, no longer floating like a restless wraith across the corridors. She would seek Sophia's counsel on fashion, posture, and the small etiquette expected of vampires mingling in mortal society, a grin lighting her sharp features whenever praised. Tor debated philosophy and ethics with Sophia, probing her human perspectives with adolescent curiosity while slowly learning to temper his strength, the fire of his youth softened by her patience. Freya and Bjorn, the twins of boundless energy, competed to earn Sophia's recognition, racing through lessons that combined mathematics, literature, and mastery over supernatural abilities. When mistakes were made, Sophia did not scold but guided, teaching them that mastery arose from perseverance, not fear. Tiny Ira, still delicate and human in some ways, clung to Sophia's skirts each morning, demanding stories and warmth before venturing into their peculiar routines, a tangible emblem of the bond Sophia had forged. And Nikolai, he watched. His pale eyes, once veiled by centuries of grief, now held awe and a slowly blossoming joy. He observed the household from doorways, corners, and eventually the hearth, learning again the rhythms of life. Nights found him in the library, listening as Sophia read tales of human courage aloud, her voice ringing with emotion and authority. He would sometimes correct her pronunciation or query a historical reference, but each correction was soft, almost affectionate, and carried no trace of the commanding cold that had defined him for decades. Slowly, he was drawn out from the shadows of grief into the warmth of family, heart rediscovering its capacity for hope. Sophia, for her part, had become the axis around which the grim children revolved, the stabilizing force that brought order to their chaos and gentleness to their hearts. She never faltered in her duties, even when exhaustion clawed at her limbs. Each dusk found her welcoming them from sleep, brushing stray strands from hair, soothing nightmares, and offering lessons infused with patience, wisdom, and compassion. When Ira slipped into her arms, fingers clutching her blouse, Sophia whispered encouragements that carried weight beyond words. You are safe. You are loved. You are not alone. Her barrenness, once wielded as a label of worthlessness by Victor and Ingrid, had been entirely refuted. Sophia's womb may not have carried life, but her heart and hands bore a legacy far greater. She had become the architect of an immortal family, her influence shaping 5 young lives in ways that no mortal could have anticipated. The children flourished, mastering the fine balance of their supernatural natures while learning the essence of empathy, discipline, and loyalty, all under the gentle yet unyielding guidance of a woman who refused to be defeated. Nikolai's love for her deepened alongside this transformation, born not from desire alone, but from recognition of the extraordinary patience, courage, and grace Sophia displayed daily. One dawn he found her on the balcony, sunlight brushing her hair like spun gold. She stood amidst the quiet beauty of the valley, the manor below alive with the murmurs and movements of her adopted family. He approached, silent until his shadow fell across hers. You gave me back my children, he murmured, voice low and reverent. You restored this house, restored life itself. Sophia smiled softly, her gaze sweeping the horizon. And you gave me the family I was denied. Blood does not determine family. Love does. Her fingers traced the curve of his jaw, feeling the warmth beneath the chill of his eternal skin. I never thought I'd belong, and yet here I am, part of something greater than I could have imagined. He cupped her face in hands as pale as winter frost, eyes searching hers. Do you see what you've done? How complete this home has become because of you. Not just the children, Sophia, me. I had forgotten the weight of joy. She leaned into his touch, feeling the centuries of sorrow in him ease by mere inches. You deserve to be found, she said, voice steady but soft. Even when the world thought me useless, there was purpose waiting. The manor thrived. Spring's sun glimmered across stone pathways, children's shadows flickering in the gardens as they practiced control, strength, and skill. Sophia orchestrated everything, from lessons in the pale moonlight to midnight exercises and supernatural restraint, ensuring the children thrived in both body and spirit. They began venturing beyond Grimstead in controlled excursions, learning discretion, poise, and the responsibilities of their dual existence. Sophia also introduced warmth and ritual, resurrecting human traditions within their immortal lives. She celebrated birthdays with songs and tales, crafted small gifts with her hands, and wove rituals of care and understanding into meals and lessons alike. Even Astrid, once aloof and distant, began to laugh freely, while Tor shared secrets only she was trusted to know. Each day solidified the intangible threads binding Sophia, Nikolai, and the children. Nikolai, in turn, revealed facets of himself long buried. He showed them ancient games, taught history of vampire covens with precision, and occasionally allowed them to glimpse his private studies and arcane knowledge. Through Sophia, he rediscovered both paternal pride and romantic intimacy, gradually repairing wounds that had festered for decades. Evenings often found Sophia and Nikolai on the balcony, watching stars glimmer over the mountains. Regret calling me useless? He asked, playful warmth threading his tone. She laughed, leaning against his chest. Every day he breathes without us, she replied, voice soft but fierce with conviction. Together they built a sanctuary of love, discipline, and emotional richness. The children learned courage and empathy. The manor reflected joy instead of desolation. Sophia had taken a role once deemed unworthy and transformed it into the foundation of a legendary lineage. Her love, unending patience, and unwavering moral compass became the benchmark against which the immortals of Grimstead measured devotion. By summer, Grimstead Hall was spoken of in whispers among both mortal and immortal worlds. Legends told of the mortal woman who claimed the heart of a vampire lord, nurtured his children, and forged a dynasty through love rather than blood. Scholars, travelers, and the curious spoke in awe of the Barren queen, whose womb had given no heirs yet whose heart bore the richest legacy imaginable. Nikolai and Sophia often stood together, surveying the manor from its highest tower. In the quiet, they shared stolen moments, hands entwined, hearts aligned. No past sorrow could taint these days. No former rejection could diminish the triumph of what they had built together. The world once told you were nothing, Nikolai whispered, brushing a pale hand across her cheek. Sophia smiled, eyes reflecting sunlight and moonlight alike. And yet here we are. Everything we ever needed, found, chosen, and nurtured. Love proved far stronger than the labels cast upon us. In the immortal quiet of Grimstead, the barren mortal had become a matriarch, a beacon, and a partner. Her love healed, her patience guided, and her courage endured. Night and day, life and loss intertwined to forge something immortal. And as the northern lights shimmered over the snowy peaks, it was clear, Sophia's barrenness had been a lie. The richest legacy of all had blossomed within her heart, her home, and the children she had claimed as her own. Grimstead Hall no longer stood as a monument to grief. It thrummed with life, laughter, and unbreakable bonds. The woman once abandoned in snow had kindled embers into dawn, love into eternity, proving that no destiny, no judgment, and no curse could define the depth of her legacy. Sophia had not only survived, she had triumphed not by blood but by heart.